the second virtual episode of Novel Wines with Yaz and Ben. I'm Yaz Cooke, a journalist based in Bristol, and my co-host is Ben, the founder of Novel Wines.
Hi everyone. Yeah, we've got a very special episode today. So instead of wine, we're going to be talking cider. So we've got Alistair Morrell from Cider Is Wine. We're chatting about all the fantastic cider producers we've got. And then we also have Todd and Maugan from Pitchfork Cheddar, one of the best cheddars that you can enjoy. So we're excited to get started.
Yeah, and throughout the episode, we'll be having customer questions, your questions popping up on the screen, asking those big burning questions about wine pairings, cider pairings, favourite foodie questions. So get in touch on our socials. It's at Novel Wines.
Fantastic. So just to get started, Alistair, do you want to tell us a bit more about Cider Is Wine?
Yeah, sure. Cider Is Wine is a quality mark for consumers to identify ciders that are made exclusively from apples and pears. That's fermented from apples and pears, not from concentrates. It might surprise some listeners to know that cider, for the most part in the UK, is made from as little as 35% juice or concentrate that comes from that juice. Wow. So it's a bit like your Sunny Delight versus orange juice, freshly squeezed orange juice discussion, you know? Which one do you want to choose? Do you want to choose a concentrate off the shelf, or do you want the freshly squeezed, you know, the real McCoy stuff? That's the choice. But the problem is that for consumers, there's no mark, apart from ours, for them to recognise that and to understand that quality basis. That's what we're about, is making everyone aware that there is a quality difference and that there are all of these makers around who are making these fantastic ciders.
I had no idea about the low percentage. That's something we'll definitely dive into a little bit later. But very quickly, Todd, can you tell us a little bit about Trethowan Dairy and your background?
Yeah, we've been making cheese for the 30s. We started in Wales on a folk farm, making Gorwith for Philly. Gorwith was the name of the farm. That's why the cheese is called that. And 5 years ago, moved our dairy to Somerset, and we started making cheddar. The dairy is 5 miles from the town of Cheddar, and we thought we'd give it a go. A lot of people said it's a tough one to make, a year maturation. But we went ahead anyway. Yes, so we made that.
Amazing. And Morgan, you're actually there, surrounded by the award-winning Pitchfork Cheddar, aren't you? So just tell us a little bit about where you are.
Yeah, so I'm at the dairy. We're just outside of Bristol in North Somerset, near Hewish, and I'm actually in the cheddar store. So we started making the cheddar in about 2018. And initially just focused on the making of it, and then during 2019 we built this cheddar store. We've got about 30 tons of Pitchfork cheddar in here at the moment, but this room can take at least double that, at least 60 tons, and then it all needs to be turned every day and looked after, and they stay in here for about a year before they're ready.
Amazing, amazing. It's quite a new sort of a thing for you, isn't it, foray into cheddar cheese? But yeah, we'll pick up on that just a little bit later. I think first question, really, we should get straight into the customer question, because whilst Alistair was talking then and telling us about the differences between shop-bought cider and sort of your unique cider, is a question from Noah from Bristol.
Hi, Yaz and Ben. It's Noah from Bristol, and I'm just wondering, why is cider wine?
Oh, that's dead easy. I mean, on its simplest level, ciders are fermented and not brewed, and certainly not distilled. And there's a distinct difference between each of those different processes. So if you're brewing, then you need a heat source in order to make that brew. If you're fermenting, all you need is the fruit, the natural fruit. Unless you're doing it you're reconstituting it from concentrates. And distilling is a separate process, again, that makes spirits. But just to kind of highlight this point, before Prohibition, then cider was the drink of the masses in the USA. Because it was a lot easier to take your apples or pears and ferment them than it was to find a heat source and make a brew. So, yeah, cider is very much, in its origins, is very much a natural product that is created by that natural fermentation process.
I have to say as well, from tasting Alistair's ciders, and the reason why Novel jumped at the opportunity to get involved and stock them, is I wasn't a cider fan until I tried the Cider Is Wine ciders, because I find cider quite sweet and a bit full, but these have beautiful acidity, so they keep all the fruit and the freshness to all the ciders across the whole range. They've all got that delightful balance of acidity and sugars and flavour as well to make it really quite interesting. Alistair, you've got some ciders as well that are co-fermented.
Yeah, I mean, this would be an example, Once Upon a Tree Dabinet Pinot. It's really very innovative. It's very much about the cutting edge. And this is the bridge between wine and cider. Most people have no idea, and that goes for trade as well, no idea that cider is made just like wine. It is exactly the same process. It's just that you start with apples, not grapes. So this is kind of Dabinet apples with Pinot Noir grape skins. And they take the juice and they ferment the juice on the grape skins, which is why you get this lovely colour. And actually, despite the fact that it's these pre-pressed Pinot Noir grape skins, and despite the fact that they're pre-pressed, it's amazing what fruit and quality it leaches into the cider even during that process. It's quite a stunning drink, and often the most popular when we pour it.
And Alistair, where do you source your ingredients from? You know, your ciders from? I know they're sort of from a bit of a wider region.
Yeah, so, I mean, we're really about making people aware of this. So we're a marketing and promotion body, really, or vehicle, and we work with ciderists from all over the world: New Zealand, Chile, United States, France, Italy, the UK, Sweden, and we talk to cideries in all parts of the world. So Estonia, Poland, South Africa, yeah, almost you name it. So it's an amazing movement.
Yeah, it's really interesting to sort of hear from where you source and sort of the variety of places you source. But seeing as we're in Somerset-ish, in the southwest, Todd, Morgan, you came here from Wales, you know, 2 years ago, to make your cheddar. What was that move for, and why did you choose Somerset as an area to start this produce?
You say, Ross.
We were in Wales for about 20 years, making cheese in Wales on our parents' farm. And that was great, but the buildings weren't purpose-built for cheese making, and we were buying in milk from various different farms in the area, which was good, but we wanted to get from one farm so we could be consistent supply of milk. So we kind of looked around everywhere: Wales, over the border, Gloucestershire, Somerset, and Todd did a lot of the legwork looking around all those places, and we eventually found where we are now at Paxton Court Farm in North Somerset. And we chose this place because the milk is like the most important thing with cheese making, and especially with unpasteurized cheese as we make, you want a really clean source of milk. So this was really clean. We did microbiological testing. We brought a batch of milk back to Wales with us and made a batch in Wales to see how that turned out. We even did a test called a souring test, where you get a bit of the milk, let it go off, and put it on top of your agar or somewhere for a few days, and it will go off. But if it's good milk, it shouldn't taste disgusting. It shouldn't taste rank. It'll just be slightly sour, you know. So we did. That's a good sign, you know. So we did that. Also, the milk here is organic. That was one thing we weren't in Wales, and we really wanted to be. So all in all, we're really pleased with the move. We've been here since 2014, I think.
Can I ask, is there a reason why the milk is so good in Somerset?
Well, I mean, we kind of feel like it's the heart of the dairy world, and there's fantastically deep soils there, really silty soils. So it's been a salt marsh a couple of times throughout history, flooded and everything. So Yes, there's really good soils make really lush grass. You can almost see it growing as we walk the dogs every day around the fields. You can just see it. It's fantastic to behold.
And Todd, your little setup on Buxton Park, it's pretty unique, isn't it, really? Because you've got the cows a stone's throw away from the dairy, and you bring sort of the milk in through this gravity system. Is that right?
Yeah, it was great to go right next to the milking parlour, and then so we just get the milk through a short pipe into our cheese plant, and that goes through gravity, and that's great because if it pours milk under pressure, using pumps and stuff, you can damage the structure of it, which can affect the texture, especially on a cheese like Caerphilly, that can easily can be affected poorly, too crumbly or too dry. So it's just great to have milk so close.
And it really is a science, isn't it? These sort of food producers, wine producers, cider producers, it's such a science to create these amazing things.
Definitely, and they require a lot of effort as well. I mean, it'd be interesting for Alistair to jump in here with his take on the traditional method style, because in a similar way to the effort that goes into cheese making and wine making, the traditional method ciders require quite a considerable amount of investment in time as well. So Alistair, do you want to talk about the Gospel Green?
Yeah,
cider?
I mean, the Gospel Green, here's one I opened earlier.
Brilliant.
Yeah, this is produced by the Champagne method. We're not allowed to call it the Champagne method any longer, apparently. It's the traditional method we have to call it by, because the Champenoise made that against the European law. But it takes a long time. You take your apples, you make them into juice, you ferment your juice, you put it into the bottle with a small dosage of sugar and wine and yeast, and it re-ferments in the bottle. And so that re-fermentation creates this carbon dioxide, but because it's in the bottle, it has nowhere to go. And so all that carbon dioxide gets absorbed in the wine inside. That's what makes your fizz, and that's what makes it hold in the glass and fizz up when you pour it. And that's the traditional champagne method. And these guys, the Gospel Green, they went so far as to, first of all, the founder went and learnt the process in Champagne, which is ironic because the champagne method was invented in the UK about 400 years ago. And then brought back the Institute Onologue de Champagne, the winemakers of Institute of Champagne, and uses their yeasts and their analysis to double check all of the processes through the making of the Gospel Green Brut. So it's an intense and overseen process to make sure that they're making the very best quality and something that aligns very well with the best of any sparkling wines.
Sounds great.
There's a lot of different processes, isn't there, in making cider? Because Ben told me about Ice Cider, and we've actually got a customer question on this topic.
Hi, Yaz and Ben. It's Badu from Bristol. I was just wondering, what is Ice Cider, and is it the next big thing?
I'm not so sure that Ice Cider will be a big thing. Because this bottle here, this is a bottle of Brandland Claim Ice Cider. It takes about 4 kilograms of apples to make this bottle. So the intensity that it has within it is quite huge, and the effort that it takes to make it is huge. Ice Cider is very simply made from either frozen apples or the juice of the frozen juice of apples. When you freeze something, then you concentrate it, and the sugar freezes last. Sugar has a much lower freezing point. So when you start to melt it off, then it's the high sugar content that comes off first. And this was the principle that was used way back in the 1850s with ice wine, in actual fact, in Germany and Austria, where they take frozen grapes. And as they press the grapes, the sweetest juice comes off first. It's the same principle with ice cider. Ice cider was invented to all intents and purposes in the late 1980s in Canada, and they have a law for it as well, believe it or not, where you actually have to make ice cider in a particular way in order for it to be called ice cider. So it's a bit like champagne has to be made in Champagne. It's a bit like Muscadet has to be Muscadet, or you know, as we kind of have got familiar with wine. With ice cider, there is no such law anywhere else in the world. In fact, with cider, there's no such law with anything in the world. So, so you produce this really luscious liquid that's quite sweet, but has this wonderful, crisp, balancing acidity that just implores you to drink, and it just makes you want to go, oh, I want some of that. Yes, please. I don't know anybody that tries it that says, oh, do you know what? I'm not bothered with that tomorrow. Everybody just loves it, but
well,
nobody knows about it.
I'm very intrigued.
And I have to say, the ice ciders are one of the favourite things I like to pair with cheese as well. So the ice cider and cheese pairing is wonderful. And we have some Herefordshire ice ciders as well as the traditional Quebec method of the Brandland ciders. But yes, we've got a question about pairing cheese and cider, haven't we? Which would be quite interesting.
Yeah, so we've got a question from Jack in Bristol.
Hi, Yaz and Ben. My name is Jack. I'm from Bristol. As an avid cheese lover, I'm just wondering, what is the best type of cider that goes with cheddar cheese and Caerphilly cheeses?
Todd and Morgan, if you could tell us what your cheddar is like in a tasting note and what your Caerphilly cheese is like in a tasting note, and then we could challenge Alistair and I to come up with some cider pairings to go with your cheese.
And I love the fact that with ciders, there's such a variety of ciders, from like scrumpy, you know, all the way through to some really refined ones, all equally as brilliant. And the fact that there's such differences between counties, I love that. And I love it because that makes it possible then, because there's such a variety, you can match it to almost any cheese, which because there's such a variety of cheeses. You know, so I love the fact that it's so versatile. So we have there's a cider maker that's just a few feet away from our dairy, Ben Crosby. So we're slightly predisposed to liking his, partly because of the terroir as well. You know, I love the fact that our cows are grazing on the grass. You know, the same sort of he grazes apples. It's just a nice touch there. But anyway, yeah, the flavour of our cheeses, if I describe the Caerphilly, and Morgan described Pitchfork. Yeah. So the Caerphilly is, there's kind of three distinct flavours with our Caerphilly. There's the rind, which you should eat, it's kind of a natural mold, kind of a mushy rind, and then just below that, maybe like half an inch, there's a layer that's called the breakdown, where it's kind of breaking down and becoming more creamy. And then below that, you get more sort of traditional crumbly flavours, but more citric or lemony flavours. That's the flavour of the Caerphilly.
Yeah, there's the Caerphilly. You can see
Wow, look at that.
Oh, that was good.
So yeah, slightly creamier.
I just want to reach out and grab that.
Oh yeah, that was good. What do you think, Alistair? I'm thinking something dry and with a lot of flavour, like the Gospel Green Rosé, maybe, or something like that.
Gospel Green Rosé could be good. I'd also be thinking about something like the Still Sidentro.
Very nice.
This is from just south of Melton Mowbray, actually, in Leicestershire. And it has a wonderful, just tipping towards baked apple type of note to it. Not too heavy though, and certainly on the, you know, really a dry style of cider. I think the acidities would just go perfectly. You know, often wine acidities clash with cheese, and it can be an unhappy marriage in actual fact. But cider has a different type of balance going on, a difference between the tannins And there are tannins in cider just as much as there are in wines, because you have to include it in the pressing and the fermentation process. You have to include the skins which contain the tannins, the acidities, and the natural sugars of the ciders. And this makes a unique balance that goes particularly well with food and particularly well with these sorts of cheeses. So, I mean, I would choose Cilantro with the Caerphilly. On the lighter side, just sort of small baked apple, perhaps, but a nice richness that just marries the finish very well.
Sounds good. Morgan, what about the cheddar? What's the cheddar taste like?
It tastes really good. This is cheddar here.
Look at that.
Oh, wow.
Look at that colour. Oh,
on that, yeah.
Yeah, very rich. So we try and do everything as traditionally as we can. So we were really pleased to be in part of the slow food movement. There's a traditional Somerset cheddar Presidia. So you have to qualify with all these various aspects to be then in this Presidia. And there's only 3 Somerset cheddars that are in it. So there's us, Montgomery's cheddar, and Westcombe cheddar. So to be part of that, we were really pleased with, and shows that we were doing things really traditionally. So part of those things are to have the traditional cloth-bound cheddars. These are all covered in cloth. You have to make this large 25 kilo sides. You have to keep them for at least 11 months, and they have to be unpasteurized. So we're doing all those things. So, and then we use the traditional starters that we bulk up. So we started off using about 7 or 8 different starters. And they can all affect the flavour slightly. So then we've narrowed it down now to about 6 starters. And we're now in the process of narrowing it down again to maybe 3 or 4 starters that we'll use. It's good to rotate the starters so that they all keep working nicely. But you do get a slight difference in flavour. But the general specific flavour of Pitchfork would be a very savoury cheddar. It's not. Some of the more modern cheddars can be quite slightly sweet, and we're not really going for that. We're going for really savoury. It's quite creamy as well, so that's what gives it that colour. We've got mainly Holstein, about 100 Holsteins, but there's about 20 Jersey cows, so they give it a much of creaminess to the texture, and also that slightly darker, deeper colour. There's that. So the texture does stand out as being quite creamy. The very deep savouriness. It's quite a long, rounded flavour as well. The unpasteurised milk gives a really long flavour and rounded, and then maturing it for a year gives that as well. So if you use pasteurised milk, it could be very nice still, but it would be a much shorter flavour. This is really long. And some of the more intense savoury ones can be almost slightly horseradishy, slightly spicy as well, which I love. So yeah, that would be a general thing, is a deep, savoury, creamy cheese with a real length of flavour.
Sounds delicious. So what do you think, Alistair? What are you pairing with that?
I'm torn in so many directions because there's so much going on in Morgan's cheddar down there. I mean, I love the sound of it as a bit of a cheese fan myself. And there's so many parallels with the ciders, you know, all of the kind of the natural elements of it and the traditional making of it is really interesting. I mean, I'm tempted to go for the Dabinet Pinot in actual fact, because I find this brilliant with savoury dishes. And I love matching ciders with different foods, and with the cheese, I think it'd be really outstanding. The Dabinet Pinot, it has this wonderful wild strawberry overtone on the nose and then through the palate. It just kind of coats the palate. But then you've got this really strong middle of the palate as well from the Dabinet apples, which give you this firmness and this structure and tannin. And really carries the flavours all the way through to the finish. Alternatively, as Ben kind of intimated before, something like the Claim Ice Cider as a sweeter pairing would be utterly delicious too. And This is a lighter style of ice cider and more aromatic, and that's why it just tilts me away from this and more towards the Dabinet Pinot a little bit. But nonetheless, I think either one would be excellent to experiment with. I want to start now. Friday.
The best way to settle that is to just try them. You're going to have to try them and find out.
I think we're going to have to organise a cheese and cider marathon at this rate. That sounds great.
Definitely.
Brilliant. Well, we have one more question.
Yes, we do. We do. So, Jodie from South Gloss has asked this question.
Hi, Yaz and Ben. I'm Jodie from South Gloss. During this lovely weather that we've been having, I've been eating a lot of fresh salads, and I'm just wondering what the best wine is to complement these.
She's out and about. She's eating lots more salads, maybe a cheese salad, and she would like to know what wine to pair with them. So, what's your thoughts on them?
So, I mean, we could go for the normal options with salads, especially if you've got some nice cheese grated in it. But something like a Vino Verde works really well. We've got Broadbent's Vino Verde, which is lovely and fresh and a delicious pairing. But since we've got Alistair the cider man here, let's think about what kind of ciders would go as salads. Alistair, what do you think?
Well, I'm definitely thinking on the lighter side of things, and I certainly wouldn't turn my nose up at a glass of the Gospel Green. Or perhaps more intriguingly, something like the Once Upon a Tree Wild Flight Dabinet, which is a wild ferment. So this uses wild yeasts to ferment it. It's, again, not commonly known, but yeasts survive on all sorts of fruits, and that they will naturally ferment if you leave them to it, the fruit inside. They'll turn the sugar into alcohol. And usually in winemaking and in cider making, they use cultured yeast because it's much more measured. You can guarantee the outcomes. Whereas when you're talking about wild ferments, sometimes they go, sometimes they don't, sometimes they get stuck. They're much more awkward to handle. So this is a wild yeast ferment of Dabinet apples. It's got a nice firm dryness to it and nice acidity, but light and fresh. And that's what would make it, for me, an excellent partner to salads.
Sounds great. So before we all run away and eat loads of cheese and drink loads of cider and maybe have a salad at the end of it, what's happening in the future? So if we start with Todd and Morgan, what future plans do you have?
I think we're still in the process. We're fairly early on in our cheddar experience. So we're in the process now of increasing production, narrowing down, like I was saying before, narrowing down the number of starters that we're using, fine-tuning the recipe. There's still loads to learn. I mean, we've been making Gorewith for 20-odd years, and there's still loads to learn. So, but generally just like fine-tuning the cheddar recipe and then getting it out there for everybody to know. We started in 2018 with the cheddar, but it takes a year to mature, so we haven't actually been selling that long. So it's just like now getting out there, giving people a chance to try it.
Which is amazing considering Pitchfork Cheddar was voted Britain's best cheese, isn't it? And you've like you said, you've only been doing it for two years. That is amazing.
Yes, definitely. At the World Cheese Awards last year, yeah, we won. We were really pleased to win the best British cheese, and we won the best mature cheddar and the best extra mature cheddar. And Gorewith Caerphilly got what they call a super gold as well. So in the overall judging, Pitchfork was judged fourth best cheese in the world. And there was about 4,000 entries, and Gorewith Caerphilly was 11th. So two cheeses in that, were in the top 11. We're really pleased with that.
Amazing. And if people want to buy your cheese, where can they go? Where can they buy it?
All over. I mean, in Bath Fine Cheese, they'll do it. You can mail order from Neal's Yard Dairy or people like that, or we do our own mail order now at Trethowan Brothers, so people can buy it direct from us and we can mail it out next day delivery. So.
Fantastic. And Cider Is Wine, Alistair, what's next for you? What are your plans?
Well, we've just opened a web shop, which is a service to our members, where we're servicing consumers directly online. And we've got a series of events lined up with cider makers, actually taking us into their cellar. So the next one's on in a couple of weeks' time, and we'll be actually with Andreas from Bramland, zooming online from his cellar and tasting his ciders in the UK. Bringing the consumers and the producers directly together. So that's very exciting. And then we got Once Upon a Tree and Welsh Mountain, and then Killahora from Ireland. So we're getting around. And what's next? After that, really, we want to just tell as many customers as we can about how fantastic these 100% fresh juice ciders are, and create that new sector and get people drinking them. Half the alcohol, all of a typical bottle of wine, gluten-free. They're tremendous. They've got so much to wow them, and I just want to be a publicist for that.
We might have some cider cheddar converts after this, hopefully.
Fingers crossed, yeah.
Lots to recommend it.
For sure, yeah. So we will say thank you very much and encourage everyone at home to give Premium Cider a go. You can find a huge range of ciders on our Novel Wines website and directly from Cider Is Wine as well. And you should definitely seek out some cheese from Todd and Maugan to pair with some of the ciders, and let us know what works best. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, let us know. And we also, of course, want your customer questions, your consumer questions. What are those big burning questions, wine wanderings, food pairings? Get in touch and we will put it to the experts.
Great. Thanks very much, everyone. Cheers for joining us.
Cheers.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Bye.